In this bottle, there is some seawater, which, as you saw, I just went and collected from the beach. In this glass, there is also some water, freshly poured about 5 minutes ago. If you were to drink this water, it would quench your thirst. Whereas if you were to drink this water, it would work in the opposite direction. This water would actually increase your thirst. Which is interesting that both are essentially the same thing. They're the same substance. They're both water. Yet drinking this one is going to be good for you, and drinking this one, not so much. In fact, I've just been looking inside this since I got it home from the beach, and there's some foreign objects floating around in there. I don't know what they are. But if you were to drink that, it would actually probably do you some damage. And of course, if you drank nothing but seawater, you would eventually die. So this water brings death, whereas this water brings life. So based on that, I've got a couple of questions. If you were to drink this one, and if you got sick, would you then blame this one equally? Would you say this one's equally culpable? Or would you say that all water everywhere is to blame for your sickness? No, that would be silly. You'd be sensible enough to differentiate between the salt seawater and the clean fresh water, and you say, well, clearly drinking this one isn't good for me, but drinking this one is actually essential. If I keep drinking this one, I'm going to die, but if I keep drinking this one, I'm going to live. In fact, I need to keep drinking this one so I can live. This is a political ideology. This is also a political ideology, and this too is a political ideology. Now, these two political ideologies, namely Nazism and communism, have been proven to cause misery, suffering, and death wherever they've been tried, whereas this political ideology, namely free democracy, has got a pretty good track record of creating happiness, freedom, and life around the world. So I want to ask the same questions. If you lived under fascism and communism, and you experienced misery, suffering, and death, would you then blame free democracies for that? Would you claim that free democracies are equally culpable? Would you say that all political ideologies everywhere are equally to blame for your suffering? No, that would also be silly. You'd be sensible enough to differentiate and say, well, fascism isn't a good idea. Communism clearly isn't a good idea. Those ideas lead to death. But free democracy, that actually leads to life. Some ideas lead to death, but other ideas lead to life. This is a religion. This is also a religion, and this too is, in a manner of speaking, a religion, in the sense that they all claim to explain who God is, the meaning of life, and how to be good. All of them claim to have the answers to the biggest questions of life. So again, let me ask the same questions. If one of them turns out to be a bad idea, if it seems to engender in people a desire to carry out terrorist attacks and commit violent acts, and if it gives them a desire for world domination, and if women don't do well under the system, they're forced to wear outfits like this, and they can't leave the home by themselves, and they don't get education, would you blame Christianity for that? Would you claim that Christianity is equally culpable? Or would you say that all religion is somehow equally to blame for those things? No, that would also be silly. You would surely be sensible enough to differentiate and say, well, Islam clearly is not a good idea, but Christianity actually is. Some ideas lead to death, some ideas lead to life. And Christianity certainly has led to life for the world. Christianity has consistently created the least corrupt nations in the world. This is the latest World Corruption Index by Transparency International, and the least corrupt nations you will notice are the ones with the Christian heritage. Those are the ones in yellow. Christianity has consistently created the happiest nations in the world. This is the latest happiness index by the World Happiness Report, and again, the happiest countries are the ones with the Christian heritage. Those are the ones in the darker colors. Christianity has consistently created the most prosperous nations in the world. On the Prosperity Index, the most prosperous ones tend to be the ones with the Christian heritage. Those are the ones in green on this map. Christianity has consistently created the most generous nations in the world. This is the latest Charitable Giving Index, and you will notice again that Christian nations are coming top. They're the ones who give the most to good causes. They're the ones in the darker colors here. Christian nations tend to give the most honor and respect to women. These are the nations where women are the most free, and again, you will notice Christian nations coming top. These are the ones with the most Christian heritage. Look at where the opposition and ending of slavery first came from in the world, and again, you will find yourselves landing on Christian nations. Indeed, the ending of slavery is a very specifically Christian achievement. On every metric, you will see a recurring pattern, and it's not a coincidence. Christianity has made us good, it's made us happy, it's made us prosperous, generous, and it's created the kind of societies that everyone wants to live in, which is why large-scale mass migration tends to only flow in those directions. Everyone is trying to head for the Christian nations, trying to pack in there, because those are the nicest societies in which to live. Whenever there's an atrocity or some kind of backwardness that happens in some part of the world in the name of another religion, whether it be Islam, Hinduism, or whatever, I've noticed there's a desperation from the woke Western liberals to ignore who's actually doing these things, the ideology that's actually responsible, because that doesn't suit their narrative or agenda. And instead, they always try to desperately drag Christianity into it to make it about us, so they can start using us as the punch bag, as though we had something to do with it. I see this all the time in comment sections, in the news, on the internet. Something happens on the far side of the world, and liberals in the West don't say, oh, that's a backward ideology they have over there. Instead, they try to broaden it out and say, religion did this, religion's to blame, theists are the source of all the problems in the world. And this is a subtle attempt to try and broaden it out and try and bring Christianity into this, so they can start using Christianity as a punch bag. So it's like, big Islamic terrorist attack happens, they are theists. You know who else is theists? Christians. Yeah, you're right. Let's start hammering the Christians. They're theists. They're theists, so they must be the same. Let's start hammering them as though they're both equally responsible. Like, if you drink salty seawater and get sick, don't start blaming the fresh water, as though it had something to do with it. If you suffer under fascism or communism, don't start blaming democracy, as though it had something to do with it. And if something happens under Islam or Hinduism or whatever it may be, don't start blaming Christians, as though we had something to do with it. Here's the difference. Islamic areas, lots of corruption. Hindu areas, lots of corruption. Atheistic areas, communist areas, lots of corruption. Indeed, corruption is the absolute norm in the world, you will notice. And then you get into the Christian areas and boom, suddenly things start to improve. Less corruption, more happiness, more prosperity, generosity, freedom. There seems to be something at work in these parts of the world that is proving uniquely capable of overcoming the selfish nature and making people good. That something is Christianity. The more of Christianity there is in the world, the better life gets for everyone. This is demonstrably true. It's empirically, verifiably true. There is water that gives you life, and there is water that brings you death. Similarly, there are ideas that bring you life and ideas that bring you death. The key to life is to find the good water and to drink only that. The key to life is to find the good ideas and to follow only them.